Interest rates are going up. Trying to get ahead is mighty, mighty tough. Bill collectors at my door. I need someone to help me raise my credit score.
Welcome to another edition of the Polto Show. This is the show to educate you right there in your household, or if you can't say if you're driving in your car. But we have many great shows, but today we have a really good show, and we have a special offer at the end of the show with people with good credit and with people with bad credit. So you don't want to miss the end of the show either. But before I begin the show, I'm going to surprise my guest how I met him. You know, it's interesting. I used to do a show on WHAT. I used to be the host of a radio show. And I used to stop over at my parents' house when I did the show. And I would go there and have coffee and then go to the radio show. So one day I went over there and my mother said, "Pearl, I met this guy. I heard it on the air. He sues bill collectors. You were just talking about that on the air." And I said, No, Mom. He was probably the bill collector." She said, "No, I'm telling you, I heard it. I heard his show. He was the bill collector." I said, "All right." She said, "Here's his number. Call him right here now." And I thought, I called right from my mother's house. And I called him up and I said, he had a machine on. I said, "You know what? I'm at my mother's right now. I'm on my way to a radio show. If you sue bill collectors, if you sue the bill collectors and you're the attorney that sues, call me back. But if you're not, don't call me back." And I was really blunt. So when I was done the show, he called me. He called me back. And I thought, oh my God, where has this guy been for my whole life when it comes to bill collectors? Attorney that sues the bill collectors? Never heard of it. And my clients were hurting. And I've done a lot of shows against bill collectors, but never had something like him. And then with him, through the years, I met him. And I'm telling you, it's the perfect couple that I met, him and his wife, Nancy. And we got close as well. Nancy and I got close, and Cary, you know, they're the perfect couple when it comes to the people, when it comes to knowing credit laws. But I'm going to bring them on. There's a couple things that we're going to talk about, starting with credit. But don't forget, at the end of the show, if you have good credit, I'm going to give you an offer you're not going to be able to refuse. But we're going to bring up topics that I'm used to with my clients. I want to welcome Cary Flitter. Welcome to the Polto Show, Cary.
Pearl, thank you very much. Good to be with you.
Same here. Let me say something. Tell the people who you are first. I already told them who you were, but you tell them a little history about yourself.
I am a consumer protection lawyer, and we represent consumers that get in issues with debt collectors, or there's something on their credit report that doesn't belong there that's causing a problem, or their car's been repossessed, or they're in a bit of a spot. And I've been a lawyer over 30 years. Early in my career, I represented some banks and mortgage companies and finance companies and so on. Earlier in my career, I was a janitor. I think you know that. I tell everybody that. I was a janitor working my way through college and law school. So I grew up in the city, grew up in Philadelphia, Central High School, Philadelphia University. And for the last 30-some years, I've been a practicing lawyer, and I'm also an adjunct law professor at 2 law schools where I teach consumer law. And that's where you and I intersect.
You know, I did a seminar, I don't know if you remember, for other attorneys, but what made you get into bill collectors of all the law out there? I mean, there's people that sue, you know, if you're in an accident, car accident, whatever. But you went into bill collectors. How come?
It just seemed to me to be a very underserved area. You know, there were lawyers who would represent people, as you say, if they got in a car accident, or they needed bankruptcy, which is different, or they get arrested, or they need a will done, or whatever. And there were very few, although the laws have been on the books, a lot of them since the 1970s, they just haven't been enforced that much. There has not been enough enforcement of the consumer protection laws. So it's always intrigued me. I did a little bit of that work on the other side when I represented some financial institutions and those kinds of firms, and I just felt it was a really underserved population. And also the way the laws are structured, the statutes provide that we say the bad guy pays our bill. So if the consumer brings a case when you're successful, then they can hire us, hire a law firm, and get the kind of specialized service, legal service at no cost. So the law shifts the cost. We say the bad guys pay our bill.
Years ago,
So it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned.
years ago, I wrote to the Federal Trade Commission in Washington. I wanted to do away with all bill collectors because what they were doing, I thought, was illegal, harassing people and everything else. Until I heard about you, and I started dealing with you years ago, and I thought, no, I don't want them out of business now because the ones that are doing foul play, you'll take care, you'll take care of them with it. But then I realized not only you do the ones that are foul play. I had one client. He calls me up and he says, Pearl, you're going to kill me. And I said, why am I going to kill you? He said, well, I got good credit now because of you. But they just repossessed my car from my driveway. I said, what? He said, they just repossessed my car from my driveway. And I said, you got to be kidding. You have to call this guy up. And I had him call you. And when he was done, he said, I have to thank you. I said, why? He said, I got a check for $100 and some thousand. I said, what? Mail me a copy of that check because,
right.
And he did. I have it right here. I made a copy of it. It goes to all my clients so they see how good you really are. But what happened there? Like, are you allowed to sue somebody that takes your car off your driveway?
Right. So without getting into too much specifics of that gentleman's individual case because of, confidentiality, I'll just say that there are a lot of laws that protect consumers if they fall behind on their car loan. And everybody knows that if you fall behind on your car loan or you don't keep up the insurance, that the bank can have your car repossessed. But there's rules they have to follow too, because normally repossession occurs before there's a suit or a judge's involvement or a court order or writ of any kind. So since the bank can just get a tow truck to go out and seize the car as collateral, then there's very strict rules to be followed. And in this gentleman's case, the bank did not. Frankly, I'm surprised how often the banks do not follow the rules when it comes to repossessions. They're better up front when they're making a loan than they are at following the rules when it's time to collect if there's a problem account. So they were really over the line with this gentleman, and so they had to pay for it.
The other thing that surprises me in all the years I've been doing business is bill collectors. I'm sure you are aware of it. Bill collectors hiring bill collectors. Are they allowed to hire another bill collector?
Yes, they're allowed to hire. They could do it one of two ways. They can, when you say bill collectors hiring bill collectors, normally it involves a debt buyer, right? So historically, banks had large collection departments, and if there was a problem with the payment, they would have the collection department make calls. I actually did that in a past life too when I was around 21 years old, did the bill collection, but not with consumers. It was B2B, company to company. I worked on the railroad, and we'd call and ask why people didn't pay their freight bills. But what's become more popular in the last 10 or 15 years is the debt buying industry. And so these are companies that are set up to purchase portfolios, collections of defaulted debts from the banks. So if Mr. Schwartz owes $5,000 on a credit card, and Mr. Levin owes $3,000, and Mr. Cohen owes $2,000, and Mrs. O'Leary owes $1,000, the bank takes maybe $1 million or $5 million of this defaulted debt, and when they get tired of collecting it after 30 or 60 days, they just sell it. So if it's $1 million of debt, maybe the bank gets 15%, $150,000, or 13%, $130,000. They wash their hands of it, and the company will buy the debts. Sherman, LVNV, Midland, some of the large debt buyers in the country, and then they own it. And as much as they can collect, they get to keep. So sometimes, after trying to collect it for themselves for a while, they will farm it out to another collection agency to do that. Now, I've asked them, why do they do that? Why would, as you're saying, why does a bill collector hire a bill collector? And I've gotten two or three explanations. One is that, well, after they do it for a while, they feel that maybe their techniques are exhausted. However they do it, by different correspondence, by telephone calls, by one-on-one contact once the call is returned, that maybe they've gone as far as they can go. The other way is that, or the other reason, I guess, is that they like to test against their own productivity, right? So if they try to collect $1 million worth of debt and they're collecting 200,000 of it, and they give it to another collection agency and that they're collecting 300,000, that's data that this debt buyer has, and they can use that to compare the effectiveness of their own collection staff with other places. And then the third way is they just resell it. So you have a bank sells it to a debt buyer A, and they may try to collect it for 6 months or 9 months. And if they can't collect it, they just repackage the uncollectible debt and sell it to debt buyer B. And then they go about trying to collect it.
And this is legal?
It is legal, yeah. I mean, there are some rather complex contractual documents that have to be prepared in order to transfer the rights to these loan obligations. But yes, it's legal to assign those debts, sure.
It's amazing. Years ago, I had a senator on my show and a congressman on my show. And the reason why I had a congressman on my show is when I wrote my first book, there was when I started in this business, believe it or not, there was 6 major credit bureaus in this country. And everyone was breaking laws, and we went down to 3. And the reason why I had the senator and the congressman on my show is Equifax is also, and it's illegal. It's a bill collection company besides a credit bureau. Why are they allowed? Why are they allowed to be in business and stay in business as a credit bureau when they're also a collection company?
Yeah, that's a good question. They're supposed to set up separate divisions because there is something of a conflict, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Can you accurately report while you're still actively collecting, right? And then if they simply report, then they're what's called a furnisher, and they furnish the status of the credit obligation on the consumer to the credit bureau. If they're a credit bureau, then it's their obligation to accurately report the information they receive. So you could make a case that there's something of a conflict between, where a company like that's wearing 2 hats, and they both furnish credit data and assemble and resell the credit reports.
It's interesting because they get away with it, and they're allowed to get away with it, and they're still getting away with it.
They're not supposed to hold themselves out as a credit bureau if they're a debt collector. For example, in this area in Pennsylvania, there's a company called Credit Bureau of Lancaster. And the Credit Bureau of Lancaster has been in business for a long time. We sued them about 2 years ago, saying, you know what, you're not a credit bureau, you're a collection agency. And it's really misleading to the public for you to hold yourself out as a credit bureau. And they came back and said, well, we used to do credit reporting. Well, that doesn't matter. And we do non-consumer credit reporting. We said, well, that doesn't matter. You're trying to scare people into paying these bills by suggesting that you're the credit bureau, and if they don't pay the bill, you can affect their credit report. Federal judge agreed with us, and relied on the Federal Trade Commission commentaries and some other cases that had come down, and agreed that it was really deceptive and misleading for the Credit Bureau of Lancaster to hold themselves out as a credit bureau when they're just a debt collector. So they resolved that case. They're supposed to change their name, or we'll have to see. That was pretty recent, but they know that they're subject to being sued again if they don't. So I think they're going to change their name.
I know when I studied law, there was many exempt states from the laws, from the states that are exempt. In Pennsylvania, there's so many exempt states, and yet attorneys, for some reason, they're not familiar with it because they're from an exempt state. They're not allowed to go into somebody's account and take their money because they can be reported, they can get sued, they can get everything. And how come the people don't know this? How come, you're aware of this, am I right?
Yeah, I think like you're talking about that in Pennsylvania. If a company sues a consumer and gets a judgment against them, there are limitations on how that collection agency or how that judgment holder can go about collecting on it. And for example, in Pennsylvania, with minor exception, there is no wage attachment, so that a creditor cannot serve a writ of attachment on your employer and say, hey, before you pay the consumer, before you pay the worker, pay me, because I have a judgment against it. Pennsylvania is generally as you call it, an exempt state, a no wage attachment state, like Florida and Texas. There are some exceptions for tenant obligations, child support, student loans, things like that. But for the most part, there's no, we're exempt from wage attachment. So that's true. Now, New Jersey, New York, other states do have a wage attachment where that's permitted. And that's very onerous on the consumer. That's very, really, really burdensome when only one, because listen, the reason people don't pay the thing in full is they don't have the money. So if your wages are attached at the source, then that really means that you have no choice. You can't pay the rent or part of the rent, pay your food, get your medicine, and maybe pay off this judgment creditor with, as you're able. When they're able to attach it right at the source, they get a disproportionately high amount of the disposable income.
I had a client 2 years ago, as a matter of fact, an attorney attached her wages in Pennsylvania. And it was illegal. He did it illegally, and I called him up personally. I thought before I report him, I was going to call him up personally, and I did. I said, you know what? Pennsylvania is an exempt state. I used the word exempt. He gave her back that money that quick because I was going to report it. But the reason why, years ago, I sued TransUnion, the credit bureau. I had to pro se it because no attorneys,
Right.
and you weren't even around then, no attorneys
Right.
knew credit laws back then. And I won. But the interesting part is the attorney for the credit bureau, he went in front of the jury and he said, I can't even follow her because he didn't know any of the laws. I did win. I won for the client's sake. But that surprised me.
I definitely believe that.
Why?
I can't even follow her. Right.
That's he said. I can't even follow her, and he
Right.
knew it. He didn't know any of the laws, and
Right.
it's making me think. Attorneys then they just say they can sue. They try to sue, but they don't really know credit laws as much as you do.
No. I mean, you're talking about these collection attorneys. The model tends to be you have 2 or 3 or 4 attorneys and 50 collection clerks or 100 collection clerks, clerical people, and then they're really collection agencies more than law firms. It's just a volume kind of work.
So some good news and really great news. I hope your wife is around, Nancy, because
Nancy's around.
I get
Yes.
so
Nancy.
many calls. Where is Nancy? I get so many. Oh, there you are. I get so many calls, and I know it and I understand it. They say, Pearl, thank you. I don't talk to Cary as much as I do Nancy. And Nancy is so overwhelming. She can talk to me for a whole hour to 15 minutes, whatever.
Oh.
She's so nice to me. And she said, and I feel comfortable with her. And I have to always tell Nancy, you know what? You're the best out there when it comes to, the attorney's wife, but you're a paralegal too, right? Now, I know you're not nice to these people just because you want to be nice to them. You are nice to these people, but that's your personality. Am I right?
Well, Pearl, so often people are calling with a situation that they just don't know where to turn. They don't know what to do. And in speaking with someone to understand where they're coming from and try to carve a path so that they can sort of take charge of what they're doing and then gather documents so that we can evaluate whether there's a case. And, just to sort that out for someone, it ends up being very helpful on both ends because it gives them a clear path and then allows us to look at what we need in order to evaluate the legal aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So you know ahead of time and then you tell Cary. Am I right?
Well, since we've been working together for so long, I know pretty much what he's looking for, what kinds of documents he'll need. And so I can help the person identify what they may have in front of them or what they need to get.
So, for example, right? If someone's calling and saying, "Hey, there's something on my credit report doesn't belong to me. This is a different person, similar name, but they're messing up my credit." That's a mixed file, as you know, right? So we need to, if the consumer has a complaint about that, understandable, there's laws to fix it, but we need current copies of the credit reports. So if he or she doesn't have them, then Nancy walks him through that, how to obtain them from the credit bureau. Do you have to pay for them? Are they going to be free? Do you get them online? Do you get them by mail? Things like that. So we need to get them in one place at one time so that we can then talk to the consumer about, okay, here's what you need to do, give them a chance to fix it. If they don't fix it within 30 days, come back to us. And maybe there's a legal case there. Maybe we can get it. And normally we can get that removed and get them some money too if it's a wrongful reporting, certainly.
We got really good vibes with Nancy, with your wife. You got a fantastic, and I love it. I love it because my clients will call me to say, that she's comfortable with them before it goes to you. And I know you're all business. You're all business when it comes to
it's funny because if Nancy tells a consumer, a caller, "I'll get to Mr. Flitter, I'll get to him tomorrow morning while he's shaving or something," she does. Like, what are you doing here? Well, I have to talk to you about, some of this new matter, consumers inquiring, and she'll catch me while I'm shaving, and we'll discuss it and, decide where to go from there. So she does go to bat for the caller sometimes because the days can get, pretty busy.
My job is to get their concern in front of him, and I can't do that every second of the day, but I know when I can catch his attention to give it a proper evaluation.
Well, you got him with your personality. I'll be honest with you. You got all my clients with your personality.
Pearl.
She's the best,
yes,
really.
She is.
Is really concerned and knows what to do and what to tell people. And I'm very, very fortunate. Actually, reviews and raises are next week, so stay tuned.
You know what? This is
Thank you, Pearl.
No, you're welcome. I'm telling you, I'm so glad. I'm so glad with my clients with it. I have a problem with the credit bureaus now. I have a problem because when I started, there was 6 major credit bureaus. Many of them were making mistakes, and they are still making mistakes. And a couple of them, Equifax shouldn't even be. Experience shouldn't be on the map. The mistakes that they're making on reports, they're not doing their job. What do you sue credit bureaus?
Sure. Yeah, every day. They have obligations that are similar to, not identical to, the obligations of furnishers. Right? So there's like if you think of it as 3 circles, you have the credit bureau in the middle, and they keep and marshal information. They get the credit data from a variety of sources. You have companies furnishing them with credit data, banks that you have accounts with, student loan lenders, mortgage companies, all sorts of people that you have contractual relationships with, credit relationships. So they're furnishing data on a daily and hourly basis to the credit bureaus. The credit bureaus also get data and information from public record sources, right? So as you know, also in your credit report, whether there's a judgment against you, or has there been a foreclosure or a repossession, a divorce decree carrying certain obligations, a bankruptcy, liens. So that sort of, it's called public records data, is obtained from different vendors that Equifax, Experian, TransUnion get from different vendors, and they transmit the information to the credit bureau. Then the credit bureau has to pull all that together using their pretty sophisticated computer systems and their own algorithms, and they produce a credit report. And the credit report has those different categories of information in it. As you know, that's your expertise. That lists personal information, public records information, what's in the courthouse, things like that, or several courthouses, and then what accounts are negative or adverse to you, what are your other accounts, and so on. So there's two or three different players, really three different players in the credit reporting process. You know, the public records part, furnishers, the people you have accounts with, and then the credit bureau. And then I guess the fourth one you could say is the consumer or the user, right? So when the credit report is requested, it's normally requested either by the consumer that wants to see their own consumer file disclosure, or by a bank or a lender who is, you've made a loan either in the past or currently, they're thinking about extending credit to you. So they obtain a credit report and they're called a user. That's also restricted because, as you know, credit reports are very sensitive. They have all kinds of information on there that is very, very private. And so that a person or a company can only obtain a credit report for very specific purposes, statutory purposes. Not every time that you think it's a good idea can you get a credit report on somebody. Actually, I had a client a couple of years ago, didn't like his daughter's boyfriend, and said, I want to get his credit report. I think the guy's up, he's no good. I said, I don't know if he's good or no good, but I can't obtain this gentleman's credit report. I don't have a permissible purpose. There's specific purposes that the federal law permits, and if you don't have one, you don't get a credit report on somebody. That's highly illegal. So I told him he had to figure something else out.
If they're how long, and I mean I know this though, but for how long and can you sue a credit bureau when somebody disputes a credit report with the bureau and they lose their mortgage? They lose their mortgage. There's a lot of issues going out there with credit. If they lose their mortgage because the credit bureau did not respond, could you or your company sue the credit bureau if they lost the mortgage?
Well, okay, so you're saying if there was something inaccurate on the report and the consumer disputes it, and the furnisher or the credit bureau doesn't fix it, can you sue if you lost the opportunity to refinance your mortgage or get a mortgage? The answer is yes. You do have to dispute it first, right? So you have to give the mortgage company or the credit bureau a chance, for the most part, to remove it. And then if they do a shoddy job investigating your dispute, then at that point you can sue them, yes. And the law is very good on that.
Interesting, because this I believe, I'm not sure if you agree with me, but I agree this country's getting worse, not better, when it comes to consumers' credit rights. If somebody's denied credit, they're supposed to get a free copy of the credit report after they turn it in. Well, they're not doing that either. And,
right.
And they're calling by saying, isn't this the law? Yes, it is the law. You're supposed to get an updated copy. If you get turned down credit, if you apply for credit, they're supposed to send you a denial letter. They're not doing this
right.
either. So they're slipping up on a lot. But the problem is there's not that many attorneys that know what the law is on this.
Yeah, that's true. There's just a handful of firms in the Philadelphia area and really around the state. And even in New Jersey, there's just a small handful of firms that handle the credit reporting cases. And they are specialized. They tend to be federal court cases, so there's just more specialization there. And having a background of knowledge in how the credit bureaus work, also, it just takes time. You know, you can't, a brand new lawyer or a lawyer that has another sort of practice 4 days out of the week is just not really, it doesn't lend itself to dabbling, you know. So it's tough to find a lawyer who is experienced in credit reporting cases. Yeah, that's true. Even though the law does allow the attorney to be paid by the credit bureau. So the consumer does not have to come out of pocket when they want to hire a credit reporting lawyer. Once you find one, if you find a good one, then at least it's sort of a comfort to know, because people are in a bit of financial distress, or even if they're not, and there's just something on their credit report that doesn't belong there, it's helpful to know that they don't have to come out of pocket to pay, that the credit bureau will pay their attorney.
There's another interesting thing. I'm curious to see if there's a lawsuit case with this as well. Is mortgage companies. Mortgage companies, and I'm very much surprised at this too, mortgage companies pull up what is called, not a credit bureau, not a credit report, but it's called an in-file. An in-file to me is an outdated report, because one time I had a credit bureau on my show, and I had her to explain what an in-file was. She said it's an outdated credit report. And they should get it from the true report. I said, well, what can happen? They can actually sue the mortgage company for pulling up a report that was outdated. I mean, is that possible? Because I haven't seen it yet, but is it possible?
Well, it's possible to pull up an outdated report if you're the credit bureau. Yes. I'm not really acquainted with users of reports obtaining outdated credit reports. But the credit bureau has the capacity to do that. Yes, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know credit laws. A lot of people don't know that even, I'm trying to make them aware. They know you're out there now. And it's but how long? How long? When something comes to you and says, "Hey, you know what? This was on my report. It's now off. Now it's back on again." Are they allowed to do that, or is that a lawsuit?
Yeah, they're not allowed to do that. That's called a reinsertion.
Okay.
Right. So let's say you're Pearl Polto. Let's say someone named of Pearl Polto, Palto, different person, has a negative credit history, and the bureau puts their information in your report. You write to them, you dispute it, they remove it. If it comes back or reappears in a month or 2 or 6, that's called a reinsertion, and that's not appropriate either. So when that happens, you have to dispute it again to the credit bureau, and if that can be the basis for a lawsuit, yes.
What's the worst case you've ever seen when it comes to bill collectors?
Oh boy, wow. Bill collectors or credit reporting?
Bill collectors.
Let's see, bill collectors.
What's the worst case you've ever tried?
Wow, that's a good one. Well, I have to think about that now for a little bit. That's I mean, we've had a case where I'm thinking of a case where a woman asked her grandmother to co-sign a car loan, and then when she fell into default, her hours were cut at work. She couldn't keep up the bills, and she got a call. She recorded it from a bill collector up in Buffalo someplace. They were threatening to arrest Granny. And if you don't pay this bill, your grandmother, I can't believe you want to see your grandmother get arrested. He's like, what? Why would my grandmother be arrested? Well, and the collector said, well, everybody knows it's criminal to take out money under false pretenses with no intent to repay it. And of course, that's nonsense. It's not a question of intent to repay. There was an intent to repay, but there was a problem, with the income source. Their hours were cut at work. It's certainly not criminal to fail to pay a bill on time. That's a purely civil matter. You think the jails are overcrowded now? Imagine if everybody was shipped off to jail because they paid a bill 30 days late or 90 days late. So that one was pretty bad, and they had to pay a lot of money because of that. I'll tell you that. That was pretty bad. We had a case recently out in western Pennsylvania where a woman fell behind, took a serious, had some heart issues, and wasn't able to work, was on disability for a time because of heart weakness. And so they came to repossess her car, and her spouse got in the car. It was a big confrontation, and the repo man called the state police. And the state police came, and the state police, uniformed, armed officers, told the woman, we have this on videotape, told her, you have to get out of the car or we're going to bust the window and arrest you. Completely illegal. The state police are not an arm of the repo man, but they act like it.
But the people, the people
9 times out of 10, more than 9 times out of 10, the police, state police, local, county police, whatever, will side with the repo man, even though it's completely against the law. So they tried that case. There was a $505,000 jury verdict against the state policeman.
Wow. And you know what? And the people believe it too, because they're policemen.
They believe what?
They believe everything this woman had to go through no one questions it because
Oh
they
yeah,
know
yeah. They
they
believe
think
if
they
the
know it.
police tells you, listen, if an armed officer comes to your house and says, "Give him the car, we're going to throw you in jail," you need to be pretty tough to say, "I'm not giving him the car. You can throw me in jail instead." So, but it's illegal. The police, there's the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. It's a constitutional claim. The Fourth Amendment says that prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures. So a policeman can't come with a tow truck and a repo man to help the repo man repossess a car. That's not the role of the police in this society.
Mm-mm-mm. Do you work 24/7?
Do I work 24/7?
Yeah.
It feels like that very frequently, but I do not. No.
Do you work all over the
No.
country?
Yeah, I mean, listen, like many lawyers, I was working this morning, and we worked several evenings, and so it seems like it sometimes, but we have staff, and of course, people raise us off hours, and then we answer them sometimes off hours, but yeah, we go around the country. Depends where where the wrongdoing is, but we go around the country. We have matters in Florida and the Midwest and New York, and a series of cases in California now over solar panel fraud. There's some crooked solar panel outfits out there, and they go to people's homes door to door to sell solar panels, and they don't take no for an answer. Let's put it that way. They like to make up phony documents and things like that. So you got to be real careful before you sign anything leasing solar panels.
What do you
And
want?
they're 10 and 20-year leases. So we had sometimes cases where they trick a 75-year-old woman into signing a 20-year lease. I mean, you have to be pretty optimistic when you're already 75 to sign a 20-year lease for solar panels.
Yeah,
So
how come attorneys don't like to do credit? Is there a reason where they stay away from it, or they just don't want it? Years ago, they
I'm
didn't want
gonna
it.
I'm gonna speculate that there's two reasons. Number one, most lawyers just don't know about it. It's a very obscure area of the law, an arcane corner of the law. It's a species of banking law, and most plaintiff lawyers just aren't involved in it. They don't know about it. Not something was studied in law school. Although I've been teaching at the law schools now for 20 years and try and build the next generation of consumer lawyers to come up. Most lawyers just don't know the laws on the books. And another function of it, if they know it's there, they don't know how they're going to be able to be paid for their time, and don't realize that the way the law is structured, if you're successful in the case, then the bank or the credit bureau is going to pay the consumer attorney for their time. And if you're not successful, of course, well, then we tear the bill up. But I think those two things put together explain why there's a dearth or a shortfall on lawyers who will handle credit reporting cases. They're a bit complex. You have to know how the credit bureaus work. It takes time. It takes knowledge, expertise in federal court practice, which is different from your county court where most lawyers practice. So I'm hopeful that there will be more young consumer lawyers handling credit reporting cases coming forward in the next generation in the next 5 to 10 years. That's the goal, because there's such a large percentage, or 20-some% of all credit reports have errors in them. I forget the statistic, something close to 30%. So you're talking about really billions of reports out there. And there's an issue with not only inaccurate credit reports, but unauthorized access to credit reports that we see quite a bit, not only from these solar panel door-to-door sale places, but your credit report's really private, right, Pearl?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Matter of fact, talk about credit reports, though. I had on my show, I think it was a couple years ago, it was a bill collector. She walked off my stage, believe it or not. And she walked off because she said, people owes money, and we're out to collect this money. And if they don't want to collect it, we're going to do any which way to collect this money. And what she's saying right on the air, I have it. I mean, it's illegal. Am I right? And yet she's saying it right on the air for everybody to hear. But
Right.
My question is, If there's laws out there, why does different states have different laws though? Why isn't just one law under the Fair Credit Reporting Act? Why is there so many laws to different states what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do for attorneys? Maybe that's why attorneys don't know.
The credit reporting aspect of it is not terribly state specific. The federal act does govern. There's what the lawyers call preemption of state law claims, so that states, generally speaking, do not regulate, they're not supposed to regulate credit reporting, right? Because that's regulated at the federal level. And so there's not too much individualized differences state to state or federal circuit to circuit. With other consumer laws, it varies a lot state to state. For example, bill collection, a state may have more restrictive provisions than a different one, or what a collector can get, what a judgment creditor can get. If you're sued, if you're sued, we say always defend, go to court, because half the time they can't prove their case, these credit card places and collection agencies and so on. So never let a default judgment be taken against you. But if there is a judgment, it varies from state to state what the judgment creditor, what the lender can obtain from you. You know, we talked about wages. It could be bank attachments, property sales and seizures, things like that. So that varies state to state. The credit reporting is a national federal law that has mostly uniformity in it. There are variations from federal circuit to federal circuit, but they're relatively minor.
I'm surprised at some of these courts, though. Some of the judges that are hearing these cases, I'm finding out too, they don't even know nothing about credit. They're
Right.
they're just taking what the people are saying and what the attorneys are saying. Like half of the bill collectors, they don't even show up in a courtroom.
Right. Right.
And it's a shame. They'll say, well, they owe us $20,000 and they only owe $1,000, and they're hoping
Right.
the judge will say, well, yeah, you're right, but the judge doesn't know it either.
Right.
So, I mean, why is this allowed to go on? Shouldn't new laws be passed, and how do we pass them?
I mean, the part of it's judge training. I was invited by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania to go out to Harrisburg. I went on 13 different occasions to train the judges in Pennsylvania, the magistrate judges, in these collection cases from the consumer's perspective, what to look for, what evidence is sufficient, what's hearsay, when can a collector introduce a bill or a credit report or a document or a contract in evidence, and what needs to be done. So part of it's training, because especially at the magistrate level, which is cases under, I think, $12,000, which is most of the collection cases, is their but these are folks that get sued in their own township, their own, maybe the court is in the shopping center a couple miles away from their home, right? And so the goal is to do some additional training with those judges so they're sensitized to how credit works and credit reporting works and what sort of documentation the lender or the debt buyer is supposed to have if they're going to sue somebody in court. So it's a process.
I think it's pretty sad, because
it's a process.
Credit is the number one thing in this country, and it's getting worse, not better. I would think the banks don't know it. The credit bureaus are unknown with it. I mean, it's pretty sad what's going on, and
Right.
the worst part, the consumers. I mean, they think
Right.
you're a godsend. They think I'm a godsend, but they have rights. They have rights that they have to go by, and some of them are afraid.
Right.
And this is why you're still out there with it. Many companies out there, including mortgage companies, they come and they say, well, Pearl, they can't get their mortgage because of this. And I know it's a lawsuit case, because I know, like, they'll say, well, they have all these things against them, and I know it's not against them. So what I tell them is to mail a copy of their credit report to the mortgage company. But mortgage companies don't understand either. So, and then when it comes to these bill collectors, the bill collectors, I'm finding out, they don't even appear in court. They don't even appear
Right.
in court. So when a client does appear in front of a judge, I was hoping the judge knew more about credit and knew about the people's rights than he's sitting on the bench.
Right.
And
Yeah, I mean, sometimes these collection agencies or debt buyers will, they'll take 10 cases in front of the magistrate judge in a county someplace, and they get a local hired lawyer for the day to handle the case, try and make that work. But those attorneys don't really have any interaction with the clients or They don't know the details of anything. You just get an email the day before and try and press the case. That's why it's important for consumers who are sued to always go defend the case. If you get suit papers in the mail, don't let them sit. Don't let them go to default.
Amen.
You might have just 20 days or less, in some cases 30, but usually 20 days to file an answer to a complaint. And if you are sued by a debt collector or anything related to your credit, see someone right away. Contact Pearl, contact an attorney right away, because you do not want a default judgment entered against you. That's really bad. And that's a determination. You owe the money, and you're subject to having, again, your property seized or your bank account attached or whatever it may be.
I always tell people, first of all, don't throw out any bill collector letters, which they used to. I say save them, put it in the mail to me, and mail them all to me if you have to. Because they don't know. They don't know their rights. And I thought if they don't know their rights, somebody else does. Cary,
Right.
if people wanted to contact you, first of all, how would they contact you? Besides me,
It depends how they would prefer to contact us. If they want to look and check us out, look at our website, consumerslaw.com. That's consumers with an S. www.consumerslaw.com. We have a pretty robust website with a lot of information on it about debt collection, unwanted robocalls that go to their phones, car repossession, credit reporting, and so on. We have a Facebook page. People can find us there, Consumers Law. And people can listen to your show and your podcast or call us at 610-CONSUMERS. There's any number of ways to get in touch with us. We have real live people answer the phone, legal assistants that train and know their stuff. We don't have the phone answered by voicemail and bots and everything else. I really don't like that. So I like the personal service. Right.
Yes.
Right.
We do have the personal service. So if they want to contact you, you just gave out the number to contact you when it comes to if they're getting harassed by bill collectors, or they can contact me. A lot of them, I answer the phone 24/7 with it.
Right. Right.
And it's
the phone number is 610-CONSUMERS. It's easy to remember. 610-CONSUMERS. Call. There's never a charge for the consult over the phone. And if we handle a case for a consumer, they don't pay our bill. As I said before, the bad guys pay our bill if we are able to take on a case. So that makes it easy. Frankly, if someone had an issue, they're being hounded by a debt collector, there's something on their credit report, the last thing they need is another bill. Lawyers charge a lot. We charge a lot. I'm saying it right here, right on your show. We charge a lot, like the biggest law firms in Philadelphia. But the bank or the credit bureau charges our bill. We're experienced. We have a specialization. I teach at 2 law schools. So we're very qualified. We charge a lot, but we don't have to charge the consumer out of pocket for that cost. And that means a lot to people.
How long does it take? A lot of consumers ask me, how long does it take for a lawsuit?
Ooh, that's a good question. If there's any lawyer that can give you a firm answer on that,
I know.
How long does it take to paint a house? Some of those cases resolve very promptly, within a couple of months. That's lightning fast for legal matters, maybe 2 to 3 months. Some cases take over a year. A class action case, we handle a fair number of class action cases for people. They may take 2 years or more. So it really is very dependent on the case and on the court that you file it in. Some courts are more what the lawyers call rocket docket courts. And cases move quickly. The judges don't like adjournments. Some cases are much slower, and it's going to be 4 or 5 years to have a case move from start to finish. In a few of the courts, we try and avoid that. But that's really hard to put a specific answer on because so much of it's out of the lawyer's control. But a lot of it depends on the complexity and the size of the case.
It's interesting. I think it's interesting, but I want to thank you and Nancy, because you have so much valuable. I hear it every day, as you know, from my clients. The biggest concern is their credit report and they're getting harassed. Credit report and getting harassed. But most of the time they didn't know if they were getting harassed, if it was legal or illegal. So they would throw out the letters. And sometimes when I say mail it to me, I get a big bag of all bill collector letters. And I was like, oh my God. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming on the show. I do have
my pleasure. My pleasure. Good to be with you.
Yeah, that lunch will happen again. I want to the two things I said at the end, there's going to be good news, bad news for some, and good news for another. The good news, anybody out there that has a 670 or a 700 credit score, and you would know who you are, you call my number, 1-800-876-CREDIT, and I will give you, when you call, I will give you a code. And when you get the code, I'm going to give you another telephone number to call, because we dealt with the president of American Express. They said whoever contacts you, they will get a free American Express card. It'll be just mailed to you without any applications or anything. It'll just be sent to you. So that's good news that for many out there that wanted an American Express card. You don't have to do anything but call me. I'll give you a code, but make sure you have a 670 to a 700 score. They'll send it to you automatically. How about you, credit? You have good credit, Cary?
I hope so. Although I'll tell you something. It's funny you say that. I like to keep my credit score 800 and up. About a year ago, looking for a new car, checked my credit, and I saw it was down 100 points. Oh, wow. We had an old medical bill, a hospital bill. There was a balance due of about $200 on it. And I don't even remember getting the bill. But they snuck it on the credit report, and it dinged the score by about 100 points. Yeah. So I had to call them up, and we worked it out. And I said, well, listen, you have to go back to insurance for this much. And I owed them maybe another $100 or something when it was all sorted out. I said, I'm going to write you a check today, but you have to take it off my credit report. They said, okay. And I wrote them a check, and it was off the credit report in a few days. So the moral of the story is you have to check your credit, or maybe join one of those credit monitoring services, but you have to check your credit every month or two and see that inaccurate stuff isn't sneaking on there. Right, Pearl?
Boy, there's a lot of mistakes going on today. And the other good news, anybody out there, that was the good news with credit. The bad news with credit, anybody out there that has a credit problem, you call my toll-free number, you're going to get it half price. Half price because of Cary being on the show. Half price, my service, cleaning up your credit and doing what you have to do. It's going to be a special order, a special offer as well. So people, they can have their cake and eat it too. So because I want to make 2020 the best year for many consumers getting their mortgages. We had the mortgage guy last week, and I said to him, the people that has credit problems, he gave me so many people with credit problems for me to clean up and then go turn them right back to them. I do want in the future, and I will have, I'll let Cary know when I have the credit bureau on the show. This is going to be interesting too, Cary, for you to hear what they have to say. I had them on years ago. And it was interesting how they put down the in-files, that mortgage companies pull up what is called in-files, and they're outdated. They're outdated. Right. And people can get their own credit report if they want. But what you just said, if you have too many, if you can have all good credit and have too many inquiries, I get that a lot too, that has to be removed too. I don't think it's fair. It's not fair.
Yes.
Because people doesn't know this. They go out shopping for a car on a Monday and they go to 5 different places while they get turned down on the 5th day because they have too many inquiries. That's not right either. I'm trying to fight that as well with the Federal Trade Commission. There's many companies out there. You just named one that the Federal Trade Commission, I forgot the company that you just said, that checked the credit. The Federal Trade Commission sent me a letter about some of these companies that they didn't like. They were just committing not fraud but the wrong information. So there's a lot of misinformation. That's why I thought the show was so important today. And it's going to be more important, like I said, with the credit bureaus, with another bill collector that I have on the show, just to see what they have to say. Because they're going to lie. Sure. They're going to lie, and I know it. But to listen to it so the people can actually hear them lie. So, and many of them will say to me, Pearl, I don't want to hear what you have to say. Well, then don't hear what I have to say. But then you're going to pay the price. Cary, I want to thank you.
Who could not hear what you have to say? You're just compelling. I mean it.
I didn't hear you, Cary.
I said you're just compelling. And that beautiful Northeast Philadelphia accent. It's one of a kind. It's real. Pearl is the real deal.
I just heard that last night from a client. They said, and it was horrible though. She said, and it was him. That he said, what would happen if something would happen to you? I said, oh my God, don't ever say that. Don't ever say that. And he said, well, I hope you're teaching people. I said, you can't even teach people. Because you have to, if it took me all these years and it took you all those years, you just can't teach somebody to learn what you do or to understand it. But then we have to do it because I see now with all the people that are going out there with all the mistakes with the credit bureaus. Like I said, when I started, there was 6 major credit bureaus. We're down to 3.
Right.
We're going to be down
Right.
to 2 because Equifax, if I can do away with them, there was a congressman that wanted to do away with Equifax, but God forbid, John Fox, he died, and he was
Right.
he was going to present it to Washington. So now, and I present a lot of things to the Federal Trade Commission to make them think, this is what's happening in our country that I haven't seen even 10 years ago. But everybody
Right.
doesn't know. Everybody just thinks until they want their mortgage or their home by saying, "Oh, now I need to do it." That's why I'm giving it half price to the people. I want everybody, as much as I know that's watching this that has bad credit, call me up with any questions. I don't care if it's 2 in the morning because I work 24/7. What Cary said
Nice.
earlier, he doesn't like an answering machine. Neither do I. I'd rather have me answer the phone, and they'll say, "Oh my God, you answered the phone. It's 2 in the morning," because I'm there. I'm there, and a lot of people don't know what to do because they don't like to pick up that phone. This is why I appreciate Nancy too, because Nancy actually takes the time to talk to them, and that's the good.
Yes.
And a lot of people will say, and I'm sure you do too, Pearl's tough and she's rough, and she's yes, I am, because I don't like what people are doing. It's getting worse, not better, until they decide to learn. Am I right or wrong?
Yes. No, you're right. You got the nail on the head.
How are they to you? Do they ever criticize you for telling them what to do?
Who, the credit bureaus?
No, the people.
Oh, the people. No, no. I think most of the people that contact our office are pretty. They want information and they're grateful if whether we're able to help, whether there's a case to be brought or not.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there is, sometimes there not. Most people just they want a little information. They want to know how to get something off their credit report. They want to know how to get the repossessed car back. They want to know if they have to pay on a deficiency after the repossessed car goes to auction, or whatever. And no, we like what we do. So people call. That's our bread and butter. That's what we do. So we're happy to help. That's why we're there. Yeah.
And I'm sure you feel good at the same time because many attorneys don't even understand it, don't even know
Right.
anything.
It's doing well while doing good. That's true.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
Don't forget, if you have a good credit, 670 to 700, and you would like an American Express card without all the aggravation, all you have to do is call my toll-free number. I will give you a special number to call with a code. And all you have to do is call in code. You will get, as long as they see you have that score, 600 to 700, you will get the American Express card. I think that's pretty good what they're doing, so they must be hurting too.
Yeah. And if the American Express, here's just a little word. When the bill comes, pay it at the end of the month in full, because there's no interest on your charges when the bill is paid the end of the month. But if you have a balance of even $10 and you let a $10 balance roll to the next month, then all of your charges in the next month, you're paying interest on.
It's amazing.
And maybe 16 or 18% annual interest. So you don't want to do that. So if you get the new card, that's great. Whatever you charge in that month when the bill comes, pay it off in full, or else you're paying interest on everything you buy.
It's amazing. I remember, I think you forgot, but I remember I did a seminar for a lot of attorneys with you. Do you remember that?
Yes.
How long
Yeah,
ago
I was an
that?
eye opener for them. Yeah.
I know, but I forgot what it was until we talked about it, and I said, "Yeah, I do remember doing a seminar for a lot of attorneys because they didn't
Right.
know." So it was interesting. I wonder if they did.
Right.
They all got educated. I wonder if they did get educated, and they went on
Right.
board with you. I wonder if they all went on
Right.
board with you with it. But anyway, I want to thank you. I want to definitely thank Nancy. You're a perfect couple together. You really are.
Thank you, Pearl.
Yeah, you
Good to be with you.
Yeah, here too. And I will be joining you for lunch or dinner in the month of December for sure. For sure.
I'd like that.
Thank you. And this is Pro
Be well.
Polto, as always, making the most of your credit. And this is the end of the show. We got some great shows coming up, but today was a really good show for your education. Stay tuned. Thank you.